Greetings and salutations. Today we will be covering the mystery that left many in the medical world perplexed and investigators baffled, following a trail of unanswered questions. So join us as we take a look into the bizarre death of Gloria Ramirez, also known as the Toxic Lady. It was on the fateful evening of February 9th, 1994, when the quiet corridors of Riverside General Hospital in Moreno Valley, California, were thrust into the realm of the unknown. At precisely 8:15 p.m., paramedics rushed in with an ailing 31-year-old Gloria Ramirez. Her condition had her semi-conscious and she was deemed to be critical. Little did anyone know that her arrival would trigger a series of events that would confound the medical community for years to come. Within a mere 45 minutes after her arrival, Gloria Ramirez had drawn her last breath, but the ordeal was far from over. Shockingly, 23 out of the 37 ER staff who had come in contact with her had shortly fallen ill, their bodies racked by the effects of toxic fumes that were being emitted from her lifeless form. Some of these dedicated medical professionals became so unwell that they too required hospitalization. There appeared to have been a metaphorical and literal toxic cloud that enveloped Gloria Ramirez. At the time, there seemed to be no solid evidence or consensus about where this toxicity originated from. And unfortunately, even though decades have passed, we seem no closer to truly finding out what made Gloria Ramirez the Toxic Lady. The case of the Toxic Lady sent shockwaves around the world. Medical science had never seemed to encounter anything quite like it, and questions were quickly raised, as potential theories were both baffling and rather disturbing. One of the main questions that was asked was, how could a dying woman emit such a toxic substance as to poison a multitude of individuals without leaving any discernible trace of said toxin behind? While the official cause of Gloria Ramirez's death was clear, she had lost her battle with stage 4 cervical cancer, causing renal failure and ultimately cardiac arrest. The source of these mysterious fumes, which made so many ill, remained elusive. These fumes, it appeared, had no direct connection to her tragic demise. The question that loomed over this perplexing case was, what then was responsible for the toxic emissions? Digging deeper into the background of the case, we find out that Gloria Ramirez was a wife and mother of 2, whose tragic journey took an unexpected turn within the walls of Riverside Hospital, and it seemed that whatever the cause of her sudden toxicity was, it had not affected her family. As it so happens, Gloria Ramirez had been under palliative home-based treatment as she had battled the grim diagnosis of cancer. However, on the evening of February 9th, her condition would take an alarming turn. She began to exhibit signs of Chaney-Stokes breathing, a telltale sign of impending death, coupled with cardiac arrhythmia, heart palpitations that sent shivers down the spines of her caregivers. In a last-ditch effort to save her life, they called an ambulance and raced her to the hospital. For the Riverside ER team, a terminally ill cancer patient was regrettably nothing out of the ordinary. Gloria Ramirez was swiftly processed and standard protocols were initiated. First, an IV of Ringer's lactate solution was administered, a routine measure used to stabilize patients with blood and electrolyte imbalances. Following this, the trauma team employed a series of sedatives, including diazepam, midolazam, and lorazepam, in order to alleviate Ramirez's distress. Finally, oxygen was administered using an ambu bag, delivering purified air directly to her lungs, a departure from the conventional on-demand oxygen supply. Up until this point, everything seemed to be proceeding as expected. However, at this crucial juncture, the situation spiraled out of control into an utterly chaotic mess. Susan Kane, a seasoned nurse, inserted a catheter into Ramirez's arm to withdraw a syringe full of blood, which was a routine procedure. However, what happened next would shock everyone in the hospital. As Kane removed the syringe from the catheter, an unsettling ammonia-like smell wafted from the tip. Alarmed by this unusual scent, Kane handed the syringe to Maureen Welch, a respiratory therapist. Intrigued and concerned, Kane leaned closer to Ramirez in an attempt to trace the source of this peculiar odor. Welch too detected this aroma, likening it to a rancid odor often associated associated with chemotherapy treatments. She would go on to pass the syringe to Julie Grochinski, a medical resident who made an even more astonishing discovery. Not only did the syringe exude an ammonia-like odor, but it also contained manila-colored particles suspended within the blood. Dr. Humberto Ochoa, the ER's commanding physician, corroborated these observations, adding his own assessment that the syringe indeed emitted the unmistakable scent of ammonia. As the medical team grappled with this baffling development, Suzanne Kane, who was still attending to the patient, suddenly felt herself growing faint and struggling to maintain her composure. This led her to stagger towards the door. However, she collapsed right before reaching it. If she had collapsed even a step further, she would have injured her head on said door. Julie, too, would succumb to this mysterious malady and was promptly placed on a gurney. Just as these unsettling events unfolded, Maureen Welch, too, began to exhibit symptoms of having been overcome by the same malady. By now, the eerie effects of the mysterious fumes had enveloped everyone in close proximity to the dying Gloria Ramirez. Even Dr. Ochoa, the overseeing physician, found himself succumbing to the insidious influence of the unseen illness. In a desperate bid to contain the situation, he would issue a grave order: the immediate evacuation of the ER and a call for all those present, be they staff or patients, to gather in the open parking lot. Following this, a surreal scene unfolded. As they shed their outer garments, each item had to be carefully sealed away in hazmat bags, leaving them clad only in their undergarments. Amidst this unsettling spectacle, Gloria Ramirez lay on an ER stretcher, her fate all but sealed. A secondary trauma team donned their hazmat PPE and attempted to provide whatever assistance they could. They performed CPR, battling against the odds in an attempt to save the woman. That is until 8:50 p.m. when the supervising doctor delivered a grim statement. Gloria Ramirez had succumbed to her long-standing affliction. Taking every precaution imaginable, the backup team covered Gloria's lifeless remains in multiple layers of body shrouds. Then they proceeded to seal her within an aluminum casket, then placing it in an isolated section of the morgue, as her remains seemed to harbor a hidden pathogen or toxic chemical. With meticulous care, a specially trained hazmat team scoured the ER, determined to unearth any traces of this mysterious substance in order to prevent any others from falling ill due to its bewildering effects. As the hospital staff grappled with the aftermath, an additional challenge emerged: caring for their own. At this point in time, 5 workers, including Suzanne, Julie, and Maureen, had been hospitalized as a result of their exposure to the unknown threat. Julie's condition seemed to be the most severe, leading to a harrowing 2-week detoxification in the intensive care unit. In a daring and seemingly perilous endeavor, Riverside's pathologists, clad in airtight hazmat suits, embarked on what could be considered one of the world's most expedited autopsies. 90 minutes later, they emerged from their sealed airtight examination room with samples of Gloria's blood, tissues, and other fluids, along with air samples from within the shrouds themselves. Shockingly enough, the results came out negative. Nothing remotely abnormal was found, which could even begin to explain what had happened. The consensus amongst the pathologists was that Gloria Ramirez's death resulted from cardiac arrest preceding renal failure, which was caused in part by stage 4 cervical cancer, a somber chain of events which yielded no direct connection to the enigmatic fumes. For the coroner, this should have concluded the matter. There was no evidence linking the mysterious emissions to the cause of death, and the hospital was left to grapple with the puzzle on their own. However, pressure would bear down heavily, demanding the identification of this substance, if only to prevent a similar incident from occurring. The coroner, in collaboration with the health department, the toxicology lab, and with aid of the Ramirez family, embarked on a mission to find a reasonable conclusion. The family themselves were perplexed. They were unable to link any foreign substances ingested or encountered by the deceased, and they themselves were equally desperate for answers. The toxicology lab would find themselves at a loss, confronted by a case of unprecedented complexity, as the health department struggled to gain a handle on this mystery. The county's health department would go on to even deploy a 2-person medical team of research professionals with the mission to meticulously interview every individual exposed to the ER and the surroundings on the night of February 9th, 1994. Their scrutiny would would reach such depths that they even cross-referenced the dinner menus of those present at night. Yet despite their extensive probe, they could not find anything, which led them to their conclusion: mass hysteria. In their view, the absence of concrete evidence was part of the explanation itself. They posited that the 23 individuals who had fallen ill had somehow collectively imagined their afflictions, with some going as far as to place themselves within the confines of the intensive care unit. Eventually, aid from the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories came. Specifically, Brian Anderson, the center's director, was tasked with unveiling the enigma of the toxic ladies. The coroner entrusted Anderson with all the biological samples gleaned from Gloria Ramirez's autopsy, along with the air trapping containers. Anderson embarked on his own quest for answers. Little did he know that he would unearth a groundbreaking revelation. Within Gloria's system, Anderson discovered faint traces of dimethyl sulfoxide. While not present in significant quantities, its presence was undeniable, and it sent ripples through the investigation. Dimethyl sulfoxide, in its isolated state, is innocuous and stable, being an organic sulfur compound, denoted by the chemical formula CH3-2SO. It often serves as a degreasing agent in automotive cleaning and has been embraced by a niche culture of cancer patients for both topical and ingestive self-medication. At one point, the FDA even approved a clinical trial for the medical use, and it was hailed as a miracle remedy for sports injuries within the athletic world. However, the FDA abruptly terminated the program upon realizing the potential to induce blindness with prolonged use. Now Anderson unveiled a theory based on the information he had gathered. This theory posited that Gloria Ramirez had been self-medicating with DMSO, and when she was placed in an ambulance, then later received oxygen at the ER, there was a chemical reaction set in motion. The oxygen would intensify the reaction, adding an extra oxygen atom to the DMSO formula, transforming it into CH3-2SO2, dimethyl sulfone, DMSF, and much like its predecessor, it was innocuous at one point and even marked as a dietary supplement. However, things would become more dangerous when 4 oxygen atoms converged rather than just the 2, creating CH3-2SO4, also known as dimethyl sulfate, which emits a highly toxic gas. This was particularly what Anderson suspected was the elusive chemical which had caused the symptoms surrounding the toxic lady. Brian Anderson's report would later be endorsed by the coroner and other esteemed scientists. This would breathe fresh air into the investigation, and it was released as an addendum to the coroner's final report, a testament to Anderson's efforts. However, as it is often the case, there are often lingering issues. The first was the growing chorus of dissent amongst scientists, including renowned toxicologists who vehemently disagreed with Anderson's theory. They argued that it was chemically implausible for hospital-administered oxygen to trigger such a reaction. The second was the unwavering denial from Gloria Ramirez's family regarding any self-medication. These voices threw a wrench into the already intricate narrative. However, the intrigue surrounding the toxic lady showed no signs of abating. Many were quick to point out that minute traces of DMSO could be present in the bodies of most individuals, primarily due to its prevalence as a common ingredient in processed foods, and the fact that it is typically quickly metabolized, meaning that it could have just been trace amounts from food she had ingested. However, there is an alternative theory, one that revolved around another chemical, which exhibited ammonia-like characteristics and could potentially explain the symptoms experienced by the 23 individuals. That chemical was methylamine. Methylamine is a chemical you'll recognize if you had been an avid fan of Breaking Bad. It is part of the illicit recipe of the production of methamphetamines. Eventually, the New Times report would point out that the Riverside Hospital workers purportedly had employed IV bags to capture and conceal methylamine, as the bags were sealed easily and were even easier to handle while remaining inconspicuous. This theory put forth suggested that an IV bag laden with smuggled methylamine may have inadvertently found itself on its way to the Riverside ER and was unfortunately connected to Gloria Ramirez's arm. harm. This report posited that while there may have been no traces of methylamine detected in the toxicology testing itself, that it instead evaporated into the air, finding its way quickly into the lungs of the 23 bewildered individuals. As the confounding tale of the case of the toxic lady draws to a close, we find ourselves entangled in a bewildering web of words and mysterious molecules. The tale of Gloria Ramirez, the woman who would become the toxic lady, remains with questions as of yet unanswered, leaving many spellbound with its twists and turns. As we conclude this chronicle, we are left with the enduring enigma of what could have caused the strange sickness. It could be anything from an accidental poisoning to mass hysteria. However, it is unlikely that this mystery will be solved anytime soon. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.